address income, what is included and what is not included as income. Before we go there, let me state or reiterate the Publication 4012 Volunteer Resource and Publication 4491 VITA TCE Training Guides. They are your friend. Use them when performing your research. Both the Publications 4012 and the Publication 4491 are both in electronic as well as paper versions. Both of them contain useful information, and they're right there at your fingertips. When we go to the pages in Publications 4012 as references, you will see some actual screenshots of the TaxSlayer Pro Online software, which VITA uses. The screenshots reflect what the real screen looked like in the actual TaxSlayer software. For real, for real. So without further ado, let's go. Go to tab D, Income, in Publication 4012. On this slide, we show examples of taxable incomes. This slide or picture is also located in your Publication 4012, page D1. This slide represents examples of non-taxable income. It is Table B, located on page D-1, Publication 4012. This slide represents a portion of Form 1040 and a portion of Form 1040 Schedule 1. The top part of the slide simply shows the Form 1040, the year, and lines 1 through 10. However, we're stopping at line 9, Total Income. Line 1 through 6 references some of the taxable items we've already seen on the What's Taxable chart displayed earlier. The bottom part of the slide shows Schedule 1, Additional Income and Adjustments to Income. This schedule tells me that both additional income and adjustments to income will be captured on this form. In this segment, I'll only speak to additional income, as we'll talk about adjustments in another segment. If we were to take a quick peek back to Form 13614C, Intake, Interview, and Quality Review Sheet, page 2, Part 3, we would find some items of income. This tells me if the taxpayer checked yes to any of those boxes, I should be looking for a source document or an informational form. For example, if the taxpayer checked yes to number 1, wages, etc., I should be asking the taxpayer for Form W-2 source document. For example, if the taxpayer checked yes to number 4, interest or dividends, I should be asking the taxpayer for Form 1099 INT interest or 1099 DIV dividend, etc. The source documents are what you use to input data into the TaxSlayer software. This slide represents a W-2 source document. Our job is to input to TaxSlayer software the information exactly as it is showing on the source document, no matter which source document is used. I have arrows all over the place, pointing to different boxes, but just know the boxes, if they contain data, needs to be input to TaxSlayer software just as is shown in a particular box. This slide represents Forms 1099 INT and Form 1099 DIV source documents. Source documents typically include the amount paid to the recipient or the taxpayer, their Social Security number or ITIN number, federal income tax withheld, and all sorts of other information that come into play on a tax return. Input the data to TaxSlayer software just as it appears on the source document. So I've just now addressed lines 1, wages, 2, interest, and 3, dividends. Now let's talk briefly about lines 4 and 5, IRAs, pensions and annuities, and Social Security benefits. We've seen this income quick reference guide earlier. Remember where it is located? How about publication 4012, page D-1? As you can see, I've highlighted a few of the retirement income items on the guide. To name a few, they would be annuity, would be pensions, could be railroad retirement, of course, Social Security benefits, and the IRA distribution. Referring back to Form 13614C, Intake Interview and Quality Review Sheet, Part 3, lines 10, 11, and 13 references some types of retirement income. Additionally, notice the applicable source documents in parentheses. This is a screenshot of TaxSlayer, our preferred software, referencing the retirement income items. This screenshot is found in publication 4012, page D-32. The taxpayer should have in their possession source document forms 1099-R, RRB 1099-R, and or SSA benefits RRB-1099, referred to here on the screenshot. These source documents are also referenced on Form 13614C, Part 3, right? Right. So there. Now that you know which forms retirement incomes derive from, let's take a closer look at the actual 1099-R and the SSA 1099 so that you will recognize them when you see them. Hang with me. This slide represents Form 1099-R distributions from pensions, annuities, retirement or profit-sharing plans, IRAs, etc. All represent some form of retirement. Pay particular attention to boxes 2A and 2B, taxable amount and taxable amount not determined. If box 2A doesn't contain any data, and if the box taxable amount not determined is checked, we as tax preparers will need to figure out how much of the gross distribution from box 1 is taxable to the taxpayer by using the simplified method. The simplified method simply figures out how much of that retirement is taxable to the taxpayer. When you know it, TaxSlayer walks us through that process or method as well. Publication 4012, pages D-33 through D-37 provides screenshots of that process. This situation comes up frequently at VITA sites as well as in the advanced test certification. Now, the second part of this slide is the source document form SSA 1099. This form reports how much Social Security the taxpayer received during the current year, the federal income tax withheld from that payment, as well as the Social Security Medicare premiums paid. Once again, read the screen to ensure that all the data from the source document is correctly input into TaxSlayer. At this juncture, looking back at the Form 1040 again, we have covered W-2 income items, that's wages, line 1, interest and dividend items, lines 2 and 3, and retirement Social Security items, lines 4, 5, and 6. Well, let's keep it moving to cover a few more lines 7 through 9, where we will continue to speak to income items. Now, this slide represents line 7, capital gains or loss, which we'll talk about shortly, and the Schedule 1 you've already seen from an earlier slide. Now let's do a quick look back to Form 13614C, Part 3, the income section, specifically line 9. This line speaks to capital assets such as bonds, stocks, or other investments. These are called capital investments. If a taxpayer sells or disposes of his capital asset, then that income that it produces from the sale is reportable as income on the tax return. Taxpayers who own stock and or bond assets and later sell them will incur a taxable transactions, resulting in a gain or loss from that sale in most cases. Now, in most cases, a taxpayer must use Form 8949, that is 8949, and Schedule D to report the capital gain or loss on the sale of that asset. Generally, the sale of taxpayer assets are handled by a security brokerage firm or a broker who will send the taxpayer a Form 1099-B or a facsimile describing the sale. You will note Box 1A, description of the property, examples are stocks, bonds, etc. Box 1B shows the date the taxpayer acquired or bought the asset, and Box 1C shows the date the asset was sold. Box 1D shows the proceeds, and Box 1E shows the taxpayer's cost of the asset. Box 2 refers to the holding period and identifies whether the gain or loss from the sale of the asset is a short or a long-term loss. Short means the taxpayer held the asset 12 months or less, and long means that they held it for more than 12 months before selling the asset. Box 4, of course, deals with federal income tax withheld. Now, I've only pointed out a few of the critical boxes for our clients from the Form 1099-B. However, I have consistently advised you to make sure when inputting into the tax layer, you will input all the information from the source document. Inputting all the information correctly into the software ensures that the taxpayer's return will be complete and accurate. Now, allow me to throw you another little curveball. Sometimes the taxpayer will have more than one capital asset, as well as some possible dividends and interest income from the same security brokerage firm. If that happens, the firm may issue the taxpayer a facsimile or an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper describing all of the transactions instead of issuing several individual Forms 1099-B. Don't be alarmed. The inputting into the software does not change. Publication 4012, pages D22 through D27, provides screenshots for entering capital gains and losses. Additionally, Publication 4491 provides extensive descriptions regarding this subject. At this point, we've covered Form 1040 from the top down through line 7. Although line 7 instructs us to attach Schedule D if required, the TaxSlayer software will generate that form for us so that it attaches to the actual 1040 tax return. This doesn't just apply to the Schedule D. If an attachment is needed in preparing the tax return in the software will automatically generate if it's necessary. Hope you've gained some clarity and picked up a few pointers in this segment. We'll pick up with line 8, other income from Schedule 1, and line 9, total income, in the next segment. I'll meet you there.